We have this story from UC Santa Barbara, The Current. Could America break apart? UCSB expert explores the possibility. Political economist Benjamin Cohen considers the forces driving nations, including the U.S., towards fragmentation, to which he argues, in 10 years, California will formally declare its independence as a sovereign nation. President Vance threatens military takeover of the state, deploys National Guard backed by red states, triggering secessionist movement and a civil war. And he says it's a hypothetical, but he says the likelihood of a civil war in this country is substantially greater than zero. He's just one guy, right? Well, here's this. From Notice. Trump fired them. Now they're plotting to stop him. Former USAID and State Department officials worried about the future of democracy in America say they're actively organizing to resist Trump inside and outside of government. We are looking at two factions fighting for control of one government. Historically, we call that a civil war. But I suppose the fighting needs to be kinetic for it to be considered a civil war, despite the fact we have all of the political elements of that battle. You've got predictions across the board far and wide of a pending second civil war. It's been happening for 8 years. People have predicted this, and now you got another guy adding to it. At the same time, you have forces of government falsely charging Donald Trump with 34 felonies. These were fake charges, by the way, not real, because there was no underlying crime for the misdemeanors to be upgraded to felonies. And people don't know this. Trump was falsely accused of sexual abuse, civilly charged in New York. Forum shopping is so insane. I'm pretty sure the lawyers all know civil war is coming, and they knew this before anybody else because of forum shopping. Are you familiar with forum shopping?
No.
When you file a lawsuit, the lawyers will take a look at the issue, determining which direction it leans politically, and then say, here's the jurisdiction you need to sue in. So it's been true for a while for various reasons. Like, Delaware is very corporate friendly, or, New York is going to. Now it's literally, I've had lawyers say, if you bring this lawsuit in New York, you'll lose in 2 seconds no matter what. Even if all the evidence says you're true and correct, they'll simply say he's a conservative and the jury will vote against you. Or the judge will find some way to exclude evidence and make it against you. They can see all of that happening. When you have former elements of the government and current inside government actively working against, in a seditious conspiracy, Donald Trump, the far left shooting cops and shooting 2 cops shot in the past 3 days, and an ambush at the ICE facility that resulted in that cop getting shot. The riots, the Tesla riots, the immigration riots, even the Palestine riot stuff. It really does look like things are going to continue heating up, and there's no reason to assume or expect things to simmer down and the left to stop. If Trump decides to crack down on these shootings at cops and these riots, as he's already indicated he will with the Marines, unprecedented move. Well, not unprecedented, but very rare move by the president. When he does this, the left escalates their tactics. I'm curious what you think, what you guys think, if these predictions are correct.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I think that the U.S. will actually fracture, but I do think that if California were to, say, hypothetically, California were to decide to declare its independence, the proper and the actual course of action by the federal government would be to activate the National Guard and send them in to California and say, no, you're not. Historically, that's what's happened, and that's exactly what should happen. All right, let's say
Zoran Mamdani uses government resources in New York to stop ICE. So Trump says, issue an indictment and have him arrested. What do you think? How do you think Democrats react to the arrest of a New York man?
They'll say that it was that it was unconstitutional. That they'd probably talk about the 10th Amendment, which is ridiculous for them to even mention the 10th Amendment. But they would be apoplectic,
especially if they're electing him on purpose to do this.
Right. So what do they do?
What does the administration do?
No. What does the left do if
Based
Trump arrests
what they've already
a mayor?
done? I'd say they turn it up.
Look, the left is not. This is look. They are not an organized armed force, right? I mean, their doctrine is they've got to have street violence going on. The occasional killings, the burnings. They've got to have street violence going on in order to be able to apply institutional pressure. they're not organized in order to actually be able to fight a war against the U.S. Army. So they're not going to try to fight a war against the U.S. Army.
Was the Syrian Free Army or al-Nusra or ISIS?
No, I don't think that we're there yet in America. Now, I'm not saying
Certainly, but it only took a year.
Yeah, hold on.
For Syria.
Look, it is certainly possible that if you import enough people from the Middle East and other cultures where tribal warfare, arming your family, arming your clan, arming your tribe against the system, it's possible that that's going to happen. But it looks to me like it's going to happen in Britain or in France first before it happens in the United States. Look, I think Trump is right that the immigration issue is even here, even on the Civil War thing, the immigration issue is a key issue because you need to have critical mass of people who are not just countercultural, but they actually have a belief system. They're willing to die. And that question was raised before. How many people on the left are actually willing to die? So, okay, so there's a few.
They don't think they're going to die.
No, I think in the Middle East, if you're talking about Syria, they know they're going to die.
Indeed.
They know they're going to die.
But the issue is you don't have to be willing to die. You also have to be ignorant of the fact that you could die.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean, ignorant of the fact that you could die? So,
when the left goes out with guns to shoot at people, they don't think they'll die. When they show up with Molotov cocktails and hand them out to people, these people are as dumb as a box of rocks. I understand in the Middle East, they live in this perpetual decades-long or hundreds of thousands of years of conflict. But when these lawyers in New York are handing out Molotov cocktails, do any of those people who took the Molotov cocktails realize that simply holding that could put a bullet in your head? They don't think that. If these people genuinely feared that they would die throwing Molotov cocktails, they would not do it.
Okay, but that actually is the challenge right now. How is the administration going to convince, not the few lunatics, the most radical? How are they going to convince the sort of broader population? How are they going to convince them that if you hold a Molotov cocktail, you could die? Okay,
you can't.
Well,
that's assuming that these people can be convinced in the first place. I don't know that they can.
They go out to these riots and they LARP. It's live action role play.
But how many? How many of them are there?
Hundreds of thousands.
Well,
active protesting on a regular basis, and then probably several million that engage in ancillary protest efforts by the direct action groups.
Okay. Well, look, we're really getting into placing bets on things that none of us can actually. I mean, it's really difficult to assess things, and these things. Look, I definitely agree that the potential for civil war is real. It's real. It's escalating. It's motivated. I actually do think it's foreign funded, so it's not in any way a game. It really, really could get there, but I think that the likelihood that in a situation in which people are killed, it's Kent State. All right, we're back in the late 60s, early 70s. People don't remember that the United States had thousands of bombings, not hundreds, thousands of bombings by leftist radicals. And Nixon did succeed in putting an end to it. Now, I agree with you. This is not the same. The country is much farther gone than that.
Hyperpolarized.
It's hyperpolarized. Completely agree with you. Still, the question: how many people are really going to show up once it's the U.S. Army, once it's the Marines, and people know they can get really killed?
How many people are in the California National Guard?
You think the California National Guard is going to revolt against the administration?
Why did the Virginia Army raise arms against the Union?
The Virginia Army thought that they were defending their homes.
And the generals of the Confederacy were all trained at West Point and were friends with the Union generals.
Yep.
Again, something we bring up literally all the time is the first Battle of Bull Run, they picnicked outside of it because they said exactly what you're saying right now.
Yep.
It can't happen. Virginia's not going to shoot Maryland. It's just ridiculous to think. And then what happened when the question is right now.
Tim, I'm not saying it can't happen.
No, I know.
I'm saying it can happen.
Right.
What I don't know is you use the word LARPing. I think it's a good word. What's the balance between the true believers who want revolution and are willing to give anything for it, and the people who are play acting and they'll run for cover? What is that balance?
9-1. But what happens when some dumb college LARPer takes a bullet in the back of the head because they were at a violent riot that was shooting at cops, and they get shot by a National Guardsman or a Marine? And then what happens to all of that kid's friends and family? And then what happens to the rest of the LARPers who are like, this is not a game.
Yeah,
Trump is killing people.
It's a kindling stokes the flame type situation, in my opinion. And I don't think that we're going to see a real escalation like what you're talking about until we've gotten to that point. But I do believe that it is eventually going to turn into a play adult games, win adult prizes situation. And when we get to that point, that's when the people that even if they didn't think or know that they wanted to die are going to start risking their lives to get involved. And at that point, that's where we lose all control.
Eric Prince was talking to me about a variety of issues. I asked him, this conversation about Civil War has been going on for 8 years. I certainly did not create it, though I probably talk about it, more than most people. Whenever the story comes up, I caveat this with, guys, Professor just came out claiming it. The news media is all picking it up, so we talk about it. I asked him, does it look like the United States is tracking similar to the countries that you've had operations in? And he said, the one thing I can tell you, everybody I've worked with says it's overnight. Everything appears normal, and then you wake up one morning and the power's out and the internet doesn't work. That's it. So everybody assumes there's going to be a gradual buildup, which has never been the case. And I've made the point about being in Egypt during the Second Revolution. There was only a few thousand people that triggered the revolution in Tahrir Square. 2 blocks away, I'm standing as a guy at McDonald's watching a soccer game, completely oblivious. We drove to the mall. We went shopping. Everything was normal. And a few thousand people triggered a revolution. That's it. And then the military came in and said, we can't keep doing this. So they decided to go and massacre all the Muslims because the Muslim Brotherhood was a minority party that kept winning because they were the plurality, or at least the largest voting bloc. The concern that I have in the United States is, once again, gradually then suddenly, hyperpolarization. We have this report of Democrats saying their constituents want them to be violent or at least risk getting shot, which implies engaging in violence. I do think it's fair to say many of these people do not understand just how bad war can be because they're LARPers. But that actually, I think, exemplifies the risk. People, when you look at these guys who are like war veterans and PMCs and contractors and stuff, they'll say it, you don't want to fight. You do not want to be in this situation, man. These people don't know what they're asking for. People who've truly experienced the conflict and the violence want to avoid it because it is not any way to live. But these leftists who LARP and go around with Molotov cocktails, they don't understand what it means to be engulfed in flames and die. They don't understand that these 2 New York lawyers handing out Molotov cocktails, people were taking them. They don't understand. You can accidentally immolate yourself, and people do it all the time. They're playing a stupid game. And because they don't understand the consequences, they don't realize that it takes a single Molotov or gunshot to trigger a total economic collapse or governmental collapse. That's why you're more likely for it to happen. So I suppose what I'm saying is, I understand you're saying it could happen. I think that people confuse what it means that we are dangerously close with indicators that we are nowhere near, such as that point. Oh, but none of these people actually want to die, right? Which means they're more likely to run up to a cop screaming, waving a baton in their face because they're like, nothing's going to happen. And then a cop shoots a guy, bang, he drops dead. Then the left starts screaming. They're armed already and shooting ICE officers, and they start opening fire back. And then how long till we get a story of a shootout between protesters? I'm sorry. Story already happened on Friday when armed far leftists went to an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, and when the cops came out to confront them, they shot the cop in the neck, then arrested the people. So we've already gotten one of these types of moments. I hope, I beg, and I pray that I'm completely wrong. And that's it. The wake-up call for the left. They say, holy crap, don't go to these events. They're shooting cops. Then Monday morning, a guy went to an ICE facility with a rifle and shot another cop.
You're not wrong. Your whole analysis is right. I'm just asking the following. We have an administration. It has leadership. It has a lot of good people in it, right? It's not just one good person. Astonishingly, there are hundreds of good people in this administration, and I feel like your description is leaving out the challenge to national leadership. There is a challenge. I don't know if they can pull it off. I don't know if Syria can be avoided. I have no clue. What I do know is that you remember right after the election, right after the 2024 election, there was this shock, there was this defeat, there was this. It went on for a couple of months of a feeling of hopelessness on the left. Of course, it's not permanent. It's never permanent. But that feeling of hopelessness, it's possible for political moves, including military moves. It's possible for military and political moves if they're done well, if they're explained in a way that sweeps most of the people with them. If Trump can put these things down with violence while keeping a majority with him, it's possible to win that election. It's possible to cause a more extensive demoralization. It's not going to be permanent, but that's what he's playing for. He's playing for what are the steps that I can take that will allow me to get past the next election, and then I can take more steps. That's the game he's playing.
Well, his election is it, right? So J.D. Vance will be next.
No, I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the congressional election.
Right.
I'm talking about the question. No, I'm talking about the.
So
question. No, he thinks that if he can have a bigger majority in Congress, then he can do more. That's the whole argument with.
So let me ask you a potentiality. Trump just federalized the California National Guard to command, and they sued. At first, the order was stayed, then it was stayed, then the stay was stayed, and Trump was able to retain control of the California National Guard. When you ask, who would fight, when the Army comes in, how many people want to fight? The question is, well, how big is the California National Guard? Why? Same thing in the first, I shouldn't say the first, but in the Civil War.
24,000, by the way.
24,000. So in the Civil War, the question asked by, I can't remember if it was Jackson or Lee, was, do I defend my nation or my home? And in the end, I had to choose my home. And that's all anyone will ever do. If you're in the National Guard and you own a house and you have a wife and a child and they are in California, and Donald Trump says, you will take orders from me now, you'd probably say, okay, we've been federalized. Then the governor, maybe it's not Newsom, maybe it's the next more radical person, maybe it is Newsom, says, no, a court ordered you no, do not take those orders from the president. Who do they choose? They choose their home every time. Governor could seize your house from you, could put you out on the street. They can issue charges against you at the state. The state has command, and they're arguing for control. Now, Donald Trump can claim he is federalizing the California National Guard, but the law enforcement apparatus against those people is going to be state level. And the question then becomes, who do you listen to? Do you support the president or the governor where your home is? And if you say no to Trump, what happens? And if you say no to the governor or to the state, what happens? Where is the greatest risk? The reason why in the Civil War they chose their home states was because they were like, I'll lose my land, I'll lose my farm, I'll lose my family. And then I'll go be what? A refugee in New York with nowhere to live? That makes no sense.
All that's true, but it's not the whole story. Virginians thought that Virginia was some kind of a nation. I mean, this takes you into the nationalism issue. I don't mean that they thought Virginia is a jurisdiction, a legal jurisdiction independent from the federal jurisdiction, and therefore it's legitimate for me to raise an army and fight. That's not the issue. The question is the people, the leadership especially of Virginia, who were they actually loyal to? Who were they? And we know the answer. The answer is that they were loyal to Virginia. Mm-hmm. Are you sure that we've got that in America anymore?
I would argue that we don't need loyalty to a state in a fractured culture that cares not for its neighbor. When the only thing people care about is that they get theirs, it's substantially worse. That is, when I was in Venezuela, I got to see the National Guard charge on student protesters. Why would they do that? Because they're guaranteed food. They don't care about you. They don't care about anything other than I must get my access. And so the issue I see here is the reason why the left says don't serve cops is because they want those cops to feel local pressure. They want a cop walking into a donut shop to be refused and then say, I hate this job and I want to quit. And it worked in the Pacific Northwest. Viral videos, one of a cop stopping at a light and the protesters are screaming at him. And he says, you won, you win, I quit. That was like in, I think, like 2020 or something. That's what they want to happen. So if you're in the National Guard and you were ordered by Trump to stand and watch guard over a facility, and then you have this critical mass, thousands of people, including your own mayor, screaming in your face, you choose. Now, I don't know where we're at right now, but I will tell you, for the average person who is like, look, man, I don't know, I just needed a job. And I'm going to say this. I have tremendous respect for people who serve. Many of them do it for the right reasons. Some of them just need jobs. There are a lot of people that I've met who are in the Army who are like, I don't know, it was a good income and it was training and I got to go to school and there's nothing more to it. So imagine you're in California National Guard and you get ordered by Trump to guard a facility or to go out and defend CBP. He is allowed to federalize if the laws are not being enforced. Then the mayor shows up and starts saying all of these people, you are in violation. There was a court order. You're not supposed to be obeying Trump. And now you're torn between your local community where you actually have risk of being ostracized and enforcement against your property and your family, not to mention a brick to the face, and the federal government you've never seen and is 3,000, 4,000 miles away. I'm not saying we're at the point right now where the National Guard's going to be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know, whatever. I'm saying that's the potentiality for which, as this professor is pointing out, when J.D. Vance, in the future, hypothetically, sends in external National Guard to enforce the law in California because the state is declaring independence or whatever they're doing, at that point, if you live in California, what's your decision? It's not about loyalty to your state. It's about saying, I own a home in California. If I decide not to be a part of this, I will be living in a tent with my children. Where? In Nebraska? And so people are going to be like, I just want my house. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.